Psalm 23 this morning, Psalm 23, and those words of that song and the entire worship this morning has been directed by the Lord, no doubt, as we move into our new sermon series that we are going to spend the next at least 6 weeks. If I get carried away, we may spend longer there, all right? But we're going to be there at least the next 6 weeks. I told you a few weeks ago that I've chosen the theme for our church this year, one simple word, follow. Follow. That's the call of Jesus. As I think about that term and that word, that truly is the call of Christ. Follow me. I believe that is the process for spiritual growth. Just follow the Lord. Just be led by Him. Follow His leading. Follow His word. There's no magic. There's no special thing about things you should do. Just follow the Lord and be sensitive to that. I think the word follow is the path that leads to heaven. If you follow the Lord's teachings, you do what He tells you to do, you receive Him, then that will be ultimately, as we follow Christ and have followed Him as our Redeemer, that we will live eternally with Him. And as I've thought about that idea, I can think of no better place to really jump into and talk about the idea of follow than one of the great Psalms, Psalm 23. This psalm has probably provided more comfort to more people throughout the ages than any other passage. I don't know that I can verify that, but for so many people I've talked to, and this morning, if you are struggling, maybe you're going through a difficult time, maybe you have just come through a difficult time, then I want you to know Psalm 23 can be a strength and a comfort during that struggle. It's a hymn of trust. And as we come to Psalm 23, the Bible is filled with wonderful biblical illustrations. They very vividly describe the Lord as well as describe our lives. However, sometimes in the midst of the biblical story and recording, we lose a little bit. You know, written 2,000 years ago in a culture that we are not as acquainted with, we can lose a little bit of the significance and the illustration that the Bible gives us. One such illustration is that of the shepherd and the sheep. We all know what sheep look like, but most of us don't understand much about. Any of you ever grow up having a pet sheep? Anybody here? Okay. You got any sheep at your house right now? No? Okay. Have you? Well, let's get on the same. Anybody ever seen a sheep? Maybe I'm assuming. Okay, all right, we're on the right page. All right, but so when we talk about sheep, we can come to the Bible and we can read these illustrations. But if we living in a different culture, we don't really comprehend those illustrations as well. And so one of the things that I consider my job as a pastor and a preacher is to go over into the biblical world and grab the illustration and bring it back across the bridge of time into 2015 and help us to understand what that passage, what that illustration means for us today. That gap can sometimes be hard to span. But when you read the life of Jesus and the ministry of the Gospels and Jesus' ministry, He refers to sheep a lot. Psalm 23 is not the only place. As a matter of fact, in the Gospels, Jesus spoke of sheep 33 times. And of the 42 times they're mentioned in the New Testament, in the book of John, Jesus mentions 15 times the word sheep in 16 verses. So much of Jesus' teaching was about sheep and the shepherd and the pasture and all of those things. And so as we come to that, it was a powerful illustration that Christ used that these people understood. And so often we don't. The illustration of sheep is needed because sheep are very dependent animals. Now, I don't know a lot about sheep. I didn't have one growing up, but in studying, I have found that sheep are very dependent animals. They must have someone to care for them and to protect them. If you want to write down 2 words that describe sheep, here are the 2 words. They are senseless and defenseless. Sheep are, there's not any kids in here, sheep are dumb animals, all right? They're just not all that smart, and they are senseless, and so they need someone that is with them 24/7. They need someone that is constantly beside them because they're going to go off on their own. Not only are they senseless, but they are defenseless. Think about a sheep. They don't have a lot of ways to protect themselves. Have you ever heard of a ravening sheep? You ever heard of a wild sheep? You don't hear of that. When you begin to think about sheep, you ever heard someone say, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Well, we're going down, we're taking my sheep down to the sheep fights tonight." Nobody has sheep fights because the sheep are just defenseless. They can't do a whole lot. They don't have a roar. The lions roar, other animals growl. Sheep can't do that. They can't change colors with their environment, which is personally the one characteristic that I wish I did. If I could be a superhero, that's what I would love. They don't have a lot of speed. You can't watch. You don't have sheep races. Horse races, dog races, all that. Nobody ever goes to the Kentucky Derby or some derby to watch sheep. They just don't have speed. They can't climb. They can't fly. They don't have any talons. They don't have any fangs. If they are being hunted, folks, or attacked, they are in bad shape. I'm so glad that went. All right? But sheep just they don't have any sense, and they don't have a defense against the things of this world. And as I look at our life, as I look at my life, that so often describes us. And when we come to the idea of the sheep and the shepherd, we've got to understand that. Because so often, I'm senseless. Can I put it in common vernacular? Sometimes I do a lot of dumb things. We do. Have you ever thought about someone and you thought, why in the world did they do that? What were they thinking? You ever said that about someone? All right? Yeah, but let's make it a little personal. How often have we said, and I said about my own self, why did I do that? What was I thinking? You see, it's not just everyone else that's senseless. I am senseless. And the analogy of the sheep comes home to me. And the reality is that not only are we senseless, but we are defenseless. When you understand the spiritual realm that we live in, we have an enemy that is going to attack us. He is after us, and we can't stand against him. We don't have the strength to oppose him. We don't have the strength and the ability in and of ourselves to fight against the devil. Therefore, we need a sheep. No, we need a shepherd. We are the sheep. So when you look at the Bible, you see a real shepherd and sheep that are senseless and defenseless, and the Bible picks that analogy up and brings it into our world and says, this is what I want you to understand about yourself. You are senseless. We are senseless. We are defenseless, and we need a shepherd who walks with us. Probably the most well-known and most beloved passage of sheep is found in Psalm 23. It gives us tremendous insight into the role of the shepherd that he plays in our lives, as well as he presents the need for us to follow him. And you've got to understand, when we come to Psalm 23, it was the psalmist David that wrote this, who he himself was a shepherd. Psalm 78, verse 7, speaks of that, and it says that David was taken from the fields to be anointed king, and he speaks of him being a shepherd. He chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. So when David writes about Psalm 23, he fully understands this. He had spent thousands of hours out on the backside of a hillside of a pasture looking at these sheep, caring for these sheep. And no doubt the Lord directing him and placing in his mind the analogy and the illustration of that sheep. And in verse 1, he very vividly and beautifully describes some things about this shepherd. I want us to just read Psalm 23. Psalm 23, beginning in verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. One little girl, in quoting Psalm 23:1, said this. She got it wrong, but she really got it right. She said, the Lord is my shepherd. He's all I want. And when I begin to think about this passage in our lives, that really should be our statement. The Lord is my shepherd. Not just, I shall not want, but he is all I want. This emphasis, and this morning we're going to look at Psalm 23:1 and incrementally work through this passage. But the metaphor of this emphasis is care and protection for us. I read that illustration this week in studying a group of Indians, the Plains Indians. They had heard the 23rd Psalm, and it spoke to the chief so much. He said, I just want to share this with some of the neighboring tribes. But the problem was that in their dialect, it seemed to be impossible to overcome the language barrier. Finally, one individual said, what if we communicate the Psalm 23 through sign language? Since there's no language that we can really transfer that, why don't we do it through sign language? And so they put Psalm 23 into sign language to share with other Indian tribes. And then Isabel Crawford wrote out what the translation of that sign language was. Let me share that. It went like this. The great Father above, a shepherd chief is. I'm his, and with him I want not. He throws out to me a rope, and the name of that rope is love. And he draws me to where the grass is green and the water not dangerous. And I eat and lie down, and I'm satisfied. Sometimes my heart is very weak and falls down, but he lifts me up again and draws me into a good road. His name is wonderful. Sometimes it may be very soon. It may be a long, long time. He will draw me into a valley. It is dark there. But I'll be afraid not, for it is in between those mountains that the shepherd chief will meet me, and the hunger that I have in my heart all through this life will be satisfied. Sometimes he makes the love rope into a whip, but afterwards he gives me a staff to lean upon. He spreads a table before me with all kinds of food. He puts his hand upon my head, and all the tide is gone. My cup he fills, and it runs over. What I tell is true, I lie not. These roads that are way ahead will stay with me through this life and afterwards I will go to live in a big teepee and sit down with the shepherd chief forever. As I read that translation, I thought, that's great. I'm just satisfied. He places his hands on my head and all the tired is gone. Don't that sound good? All the tired is gone. But then one of these days, as I follow that sheep, he is going to take me to that big teepee in the sky. I heard the story recently of an Indian chief who was just having some trouble, and he went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said, what's going on? He said, well, I'm a wigwam. And some days I feel like a teepee. He said, what? He said, some days I feel like I'm a wigwam, and some days I feel like I'm a teepee. And the doctor said, you just got one problem. Your problem's you're too tense. And somebody will get that a little later. As I thought about this translation, I thought that's where we live today. We're too tense, aren't we? We live in a world and we're just too tense. Life is coming at us. Family is coming at us. Problems are coming at us. The shadows of the dark valley are coming toward us. And we're tired and we're give out and we're not satisfied. And Psalm 23 speaks to that. Speaks to that. And so this morning, if you're following along, let me give you just a couple of things about this. Number one, I want us to notice the biography of our shepherd. The biography of our shepherd in verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. First of all, He is a powerful shepherd. The word Lord there is the word Jehovah. It literally means all-powerful one. It has the idea of self-sufficient, all power. And David is saying, the Lord, the person that I am telling you about, He is Jehovah. He is all-powerful. He has existed from the very beginning, before time. He is self-existent. He has all the power that He will ever need. He has all the power that you ever need. And so when we come to Psalm 23, if we want to apply the beauty of this psalm to our life, we've got to understand that Psalm 23 is about a shepherd, and not just a shepherd, a powerful shepherd. See, David out in the woods with his sheep, no doubt there were times that he was fearful. There were situations that he could not remedy. But when David began to say the shepherd that we follow and that leads us, there is no threat, there is no danger that He cannot handle. Not only does He say He's a powerful shepherd, but He is a present shepherd. The Lord is. Not the Lord will be. And I'm thankful today that every morning that I get up, the Lord is my shepherd. Amen. I'm thankful that every trial that I face, the Lord is with me. I don't have to look and say, boy, I hope God is with me tomorrow, because His Word says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And David said, this shepherd, not only is he all powerful, but to understand it, he is present. But there's something just as beautiful next that he says about this. He is a personal shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. Not just a shepherd, not just the good shepherd, although He is that. He is more than the good shepherd. He is my shepherd. He doesn't just lead a flock, He leads me. Which means all of that power, it's available to me. All of the strength that I will ever need because He is mine, I will have it. All of the valleys that I go through, He will go with me because He is a present shepherd. He is a personal shepherd. But I want you to see the last of all what David says. He is a providing shepherd. I shall not. This passage is so rich with beauty of all the things that we need. We are lonely creatures. We want someone to be with us. Now, most of you, like me, if you have a family, sometimes you think, I wish I just had a little time to myself. Any of you ever think that way? Your wife or husband's not going to get mad at you. This is part of the sermon, all right? But I noticed once I get that time away, it doesn't take but just a few weeks. It doesn't take but just a couple of hours or a day before I begin to say, man, I miss our family. I miss being around people. And so the Lord is with me everywhere I go. I am never alone. And David said, you may be in a valley, but you're not alone in that valley. You may be out in a pasture, you may be in an area that you don't understand, but you are not alone. If you are the Lord's, He is your shepherd, and He provides all that I want. I shall not want. I want to spend the next few moments this morning talking about the principles of the pasture. There's some things that I think this passage teaches us in verse 1. First of all, I think it teaches this: satisfaction in life is directly related to our relationship with the shepherd. Satisfaction in life is directly related to our relationship, or is determined by our relationship with the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Notice, David said, because the Lord is this today, because I know He is mine, I am not going to worry about what's in the future. He is all I want. I shall not want. And you could talk about all of the different things in life. There may be some things that I think I want, but when it comes to the things that I really need, the wants, the things in life, the Lord is going to satisfy that. And if I know the shepherd, if He is mine, then I'm going to find satisfaction. So the question this morning to every person, and certainly to every believer, is how much are you relying on the shepherd? How much are you looking to the shepherd? Those that follow Him, those that are His, they don't lack the things that they need. Psalm 34, verse 10 is an interesting verse in this passage. The Bible says in Psalm 34, verse 10, the young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Now think about the analogy of this morning. Who's the king of the jungle? The lion. You know, when you begin to talk about the jungle and you begin to talk about animals, if there is a self-sufficient animal, do you know which one it is? It's the lion. He roars the loudest. He has speed. He is the direct opposite of the sheep. The sheep have no talons, they have no claws, they have no speed, they have no roar, they can't climb, they can't do all of those things. But the lion can do all of that. Most of that. And what the Bible says is sometimes those lions, they may go without. They can have all of the skill, they can have all of the defense mechanisms, they can have all of the hunting things, but they may go without. But those that follow the Lord, or if you might would put, but those who are sheep, they lack nothing. We may not. There are people in this world that may have all of everything that they want, but they're going without some things. They may be going without peace and satisfaction and contentment and happiness and joy. But those of us who follow the Lord, we lack nothing. Secondly, what draws us to the shepherd can also distract us from him. What draws us to the shepherd can also distract us from him. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now that's beautiful. But there's a danger there. That when God continually blesses, and God continually gives, so often we as humans in our sinful nature, in the midst of abundance, guess what we are prone to do? We are prone to forget God. We are prone to look at that and claim it as our own. One individual wrote this, one commentator said this: although God by His benefits gently allures us to Himself, as it were by a taste of His fatherly sweetness, yet there is nothing into which we more easily fall than into a forgetfulness of Him. When we are in the enjoyment of peace and comfort, yea, prosperity, not only so intoxicates many as to carry them beyond all bounds in their myrrh, but it also generates insolence, which makes them proudly rise up and break forth against. I found that in my own life. Do you know so often when, and you may think less of me, but you want to know so often when I really draw and reach out to God more than any other time? It's when things are difficult. You see, when things are great, it's not that I deny God, I just forget about Him. It's not that I don't want Him, it's just I'm so caught up in His blessings. And so one of the principles of the pasture that we need to understand is, yes, as we follow this powerful shepherd, and He gives us everything that we need, that is beautiful, and all of the blessings come, and it's wonderful. But the danger is that we can get so caught up in that we forget about God and we move away from Him. I believe in the book of Proverbs it is where the writer of Proverbs says, Lord, just help me not to be so poor that I have to steal. But help me not be so rich that I forget about You. There's a danger in all of that, and as a believer, the things that God provides for us are beautiful, but there is that danger. What draws us to the shepherd can also distract us from Him. I tell people that in marriage. It's interesting in marriage as well. The things that draw you to your spouse when you're dating, those will be the things that drive you crazy once you get married. You know, when you're dating, oh, they're so different than me. They're spontaneous and they're, or they're so stable. And then when you get married, it's like, nah, don't you plan anything? You're driving me crazy. Or you have to think, you're so analytical. And this is not stuff that me and Colette do today. Yesterday, yes, but not today. Yes. But the reality is the things that in our marriages, the things that draw us to one another, they tend to be the things that distract us and can become a division in the marriage. The same is true in our relationship with the Lord. The Lord's goodness, it is the thing that draws us to Him, this peace, this joy, this happiness. But if we're not careful, we can get into the relationship and we get caught up with all of His goodness and distracts us away from Him. Third, let me give you the last thing. The cross reveals the shepherd's love. The cross reveals the shepherd's love for us. You say, well, there's no cross in Psalm 23:1, but there's a shepherd. And Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. And Jesus constantly was referring to Himself. And in one passage in Luke chapter 15, verse 4, the Bible says this. What man of you, having 100 sheep, and having lost one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he finds it? You know what that's a picture of? That's taking the picture of the sheep, the shepherd, Jesus Christ, and He's saying, guys, I want you to understand that the reason I am here on earth is because I'm a shepherd. And I'm willing to leave all of the comforts and all of the glories and all of the majesty and all of the beauty of heaven to go after that one sheep that's strayed. Now, who is that one sheep? It's me and it's you. It's not just me and you, it's your neighbor and my neighbor. It's our coworker. It's that family member that is hard to get along with. It is the individual that gets under our skin. That's the one sheep that Jesus said, I am willing to leave all of heaven and go after that one. And we are so thankful that He does that. But you know what? We are called to do that as well. We are called to leave our comfort day in and day out and go after those that are going astray. And the cross is evidence. The cross is a reminder that Jesus is willing to leave the sheep and leave all of the glories of angels and leave all the presence of the Father, if you will, to go after that one sheep. Why is He going after that one sheep? It carries us all the way back to the beginning, because that one sheep is senseless and defenseless. He will never find his way to God on our own. Jesus has to go after us. The devil will destroy him or her or us every time. And so the Lord looks down from heaven and says, that is that's my creation. They are made in my likeness and my image. They are designed to live eternally with me, to live in fellowship with me, and they are out, and I know the danger that they face, so I'm going to go after them. He leaves everything. And I'm so thankful for that. In conclusion, let me encourage you to look at Genesis 48. This week I was reading and ran across a passage that I never really noticed and thought about. But the story is recorded as that of Jacob. And he is there with Joseph. And you know, if you don't know the story of Jacob is he has all of these sons, and Joseph, his favorite, is sold into slavery, and he spends a lifetime thinking that Joseph is dead. He grieves, no doubt, daily for years and years and years. And if you follow the story, Joseph becomes the leader of Egypt. His brothers come, and the story ends where Jacob is now in Egypt, and he's standing before his son, whom he has thought has been dead all of his life, or for most of Jacob's life. In 48, verse 15, Jacob says, "And he blessed Joseph and said, 'The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day.'" I want you to capture that. Joseph, I want to tell you about the God I serve. He has been my shepherd all my life. He was my daddy's shepherd. He was my granddaddy's shepherd. He's been my shepherd all my life. He's going to encourage now Joseph to be sure that God is his shepherd. And no doubt in Jacob's mind, he's thinking about the dark valleys that shepherd has led him through in the trials. I'm sure that in this moment, Jacob's mind goes back to that day when Joseph was born. He thought about the green pastures of his life. There's no doubt in my mind that his mind went back to that day when his brothers threw that dirty, bloody coat in front of him and said, "Dad, we don't know what happened." I'm sure that Jacob thought for a minute and said, "The God who has shepherded me all of my life, he's walked through that." But I want you to notice verse 11 of that same passage. Jacob says, "And Israel said to Joseph," or Jacob said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face. Behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Jacob says this, "Joseph, I've had a shepherd my whole life. He's guided me, he's protected me, he's directed me. And I want to tell you, I never expected to experience what I'm experiencing today. Just for years and years, I thought I'd never see you again. And now, I'm experiencing a blessing that I could not have ever imagined. I'm not only seeing you, but I'm seeing your sons." Now, what's the point? I'm not 140 years old like Jacob. I haven't experienced the tragedies that Jacob experienced, but I can tell you this, that I have experienced blessings that I never expected. And I want to remind us this morning, when we follow Christ, I don't know what they're going to be, but I guarantee you this. If you'll make him your shepherd, you'll experience blessings that you never expected. A couple of weeks ago, or last week, when I was in Alabama, I was preaching at a church. And after the service, I was talking to the pastor's wife, and we were talking, and a name came up. I said, you know David Cox? I said, "Oh, yeah, I know David Cox." They said, "Well, he was in town. He's in town." I said, "Yeah, I know David Cox." I said, "David Cox, when I was 8 years old, David Cox would run a bus route into the apartment complex where I lived." And I said, "David, he would get out there on Saturdays, and he'd give us candy and invite us to come to church and go to children's church with him." And my daddy wasn't there, and I said, "David would get out, he'd play baseball with us, and he'd kick football and throw football with us." And I'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna ride the church bus." And I said, you know, I lied to him more than you know. I said, he'd give us candy. And I said, and then, you know, later on, about 4 years later, I went to a junior camp, a church camp. And David was preaching that camp. And I said, at 12 years old, August 3rd, 1983, I knelt down on that cement floor in that rugged old church camp. And I asked Jesus Christ to forgive me of my sins and to be my Savior. I said, I hadn't seen David Cox since then. I said, that's been 30 years. I said, he won't even remember me. She said, well, I got his number. I said, you know, you want to call him? And so after church that night, she called him, handed me the phone, and I said, Brother David, I said, do you remember a guy? Do you remember a guy named Randall Wright? He said, no. So that kind of vaguely. I said, well, what about the name Skipper? That used to be my nickname. So you remember a guy named Skipper? He said, oh yeah. I said, you remember the little fat, red-headed honk that used to live in Spanish Oak Apartments and Smart Mouth? He said, oh yeah, I remember. I said, David, I said, that's who I am. And I said, you don't know it. I said, but you were preaching at camp when I was 12. And I got saved. And I said, I just want to call you and tell you. Thanks. And he said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, you know, I said, I went to Bible college and I'm living in McKinney, Texas, and I said, I'm planting a church. And I said, I just want you to know that you're a part of what God's doing. And you know, we just had a little time right there on the phone. Because in his mind, he never expected that. And where I stand today, I want to tell you, God's given me so many blessings that I never expected. You know, I never expected to have a wonderful life that I have. I never expected to have a wonderful wife and a wonderful family. You grow up in the mess that I grew up in. You just, if you survive, you think you've done great. But I look back, and if I trace the thread, there's not at one point, there's not at one time that I can point and say, well, you know, I'm where I am today because I did this. No, it's all about Jesus. And sometimes we go home, and I may have told you this, we go home, and several years ago, we'd go home to Alabama, and we'd drive our kids, when they were younger, we'd drive by an old house. And I'd say, kids, you remember me telling you the story about growing up and Granny getting beat up, or me hiding on the other side of the bed, and all the cussing and fussing? And, yeah. So that was in that house right there. We tell our kids, we do the same for Colette's family and houses, and I'd say, kids, I want you to understand, you will never experience that. You will never know what it's like to see your mama get beat up by your daddy. Now, I know you've seen your daddy get beat up by your mama lots of times. But you'll never know what it's like for the cussing and the fussing and the screaming and the hollering. And the reason? Not because your daddy's a good guy. Not because your daddy got it figured out. Because Jesus Christ forgave me my sin. And in relation to the message today, it's because I decided to get out of the enemy's pasture. No, I didn't decide to get out. Jesus Christ walked over in the enemy's pasture and loved me into his pasture. Today, I want to remind us that the Lord is our shepherd. If we'll follow him and trust him, we will not want. And we will experience more than we ever